questions we wrestle with as Christians about who God is, how do we live out our faith, what is the Bible, what is the truth of the Bible, what are we supposed to believe, how are we supposed to live? There are really big, deep questions that we ask each other, that we ask God, that we wrestle with ourselves. And that's why the Cultivate podcast exists, to help us go deeper in our understanding of who God is, His Word, and the way that He's called us to live. Hey everyone, I'm Charlie Lofton, the lead pastor at The Grove. Thanks for joining us. And we have here, again, perhaps the world's greatest podcast producer.
Oh, that's not what I thought you were going to say.
What? World's greatest human?
Whoop, whoop. Yeah, I'll take that one.
Great friend, great question asker, great podcast producer. I mean, there's plenty of podcast producers out there that can click buttons and edit things. But can they also get on this side of the camera?
Right.
And do a great job, not only just talking and on the camera, but also asking great questions. Very relatable. You're just a jack of all trades.
Thank you. Master of none.
No. Master of all. Master, Jack, and master of all trades.
I'll take it.
Abigail Boone. So we have been doing a series. We've been kind of asking, Mark and I were talking about answering some big questions. And then every now and then we will take a break. And then you come and ask me some questions that most of which are coming from your own mind, but I also know you interact with other people too. And so we just spent some time, most of us last time, talking about Jesus being the only way and sin and how do we find God and those kinds of things. We still got plenty more questions. I know well enough that there are not enough episodes we could do.
There's not.
To answer all the questions.
I already know one I'm going to have to skip.
But we have plenty.
We do.
So.
I actually, as I was watching the Mavs game, as I was discussing earlier, I was just like, I'll ask ChatGPT if it has any questions about the resurrection of Christ. And there's like 3 in a row. I think it was pulling from like Google, what's the most commonly searched question. And there's like 3 in a row that were different variations of, did he really have to? It was just like, did you have to do that?
So you started the last episode by asking me a hot take Chick-fil-A question. I'm going to ask you one now.
Okay.
ChatGPT or Google Gemini?
I've never used Gemini, actually.
I have found Gemini to be it takes fewer prompts for me to get Gemini to really understand the question that I'm asking.
Oh, interesting. I never have to say much to ChatGPT. Maybe
I'm like, no. Less formal, more formal.
Sure.
No, that's not what I mean by that question. Like,
maybe I'm just better spoken than you. No, I actually, though I am in the media space and I am in all of those things, I am not. What's your qualms with me saying media space?
I'm in the media space.
Okay.
What space am I in?
You're in the thinking space.
I feel like I'm in media space right now.
You are.
I'm in your space.
You're in my space. Welcome to my area.
Your space, media space.
But I don't use that much AI. I did for one of our bumpers. I created a whole category of photos from it, but I haven't done
as of right
much.
now. AI that you probably have. I mean, maybe there's probably AI out there somewhere that can edit a video, but
yeah, but it's not that great.
Sound production.
But when it comes to creating scripts and talking to it, I actually last night was going to try and get it to make me some code, but I don't know AI enough to know what question to ask to get what I need to get. So maybe I should ask Gemini.
It's worth trying.
I am very pro Google, so I'll hop on there. This episode's sponsored by Google.
2 of the some of the staff evals that I just did, like the one that like you guys are evaluating me, 100%, 100% Google Gemini. One prompt, and I was like, "This is better than anything that I could have ever put together." And then the other one I did for volunteers evaluating the ministry that they're volunteering in, Google Gemini. One take, and it was perfect.
I truly thought you were just telling me that you wrote an eval.
Fill out your evaluation using it. Answer these questions for me.
You're like, I do not want to think about Abigail for one more second.
Do you think I have done a good job, Google?
Yes. Boost me up,
You
Google.
told me to keep us on time so you can ask all your
let's
questions.
Hop in.
Okay.
Let's hop in. So I hope you have this pulled up. If you don't, you can go ahead and do it. So we're going to talk about the Romans verse that you and Mark discussed.
Okay.
So this was all in the episode where you asked a question, but what about that one person? I actually like the way that you phrased it. You didn't just say, what about that person who doesn't hear? But you also kind of entered the side of, why didn't I get to?
Right.
Like that. I don't know if you've heard it. I got it from the ministry I used to be in. It was this really sad, depressing poem about like, you knew me here on earth, but why did you never tell me? It's really sad. But that kind of idea of like, why didn't I get to know this? But y'all brought up the Romans 1 verse where it talks about the revelation has been made clear. Also, anytime on this podcast that I quote scripture, you should go look it up yourself, because my Spark Notes version of it is probably not always accurate.
Can't be true.
But when I hear that, my mind always goes to someone standing on an island and they don't have any cell towers, whatever. They don't have connection to look up some stuff. And they just suddenly are like, oh my gosh, that wind in that tree is absolutely beautiful. I think I'm sinful and God must have died on a cross years ago. And the only way to be justified and made right is to believe in him. Is that what you mean?
There's a lot of steps between wind and realizing I need God to come die for me in order.
But I feel like people use this as a response to what about that person who didn't hear, and they don't get, like, every time I hear it, I'm sitting over there like gripping my steering wheel, like, I have so many more questions. What do you mean by that? That sounds just so vague, and like surely that's not enough for someone. So just expound more on like what could that possibly mean for
the
someone?
Romans 1 passage is,
maybe summarize a little bit so people can know what I'm actually referring
to. I'm going to read it.
Okay.
I'm going to read it. It's in Romans 1. It's not as people use this passage I'm talking to as if it is affirming, right? It shows that people can find God through nature.
Right.
That is not what Romans 1 says.
Okay.
And when I start with the very first phrase of this, you'll realize this is not meant to be an affirming passage. What
do you mean when you say affirming passage?
That makes you're not going to feel good having read it.
I see. Okay.
Romans 1, starting verse 18. The wrath of God is revealed. Okay, right? So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Okay, so starting off right now, he's saying that God sees wickedness everywhere, and the wrath of God, again, wrath should be understood as punishment, just punishment. We use wrath as if it's just kind of some wild, angry, evil, irrational thing, but wrath is just simply tornado. Punishment that is deserved.
Yeah.
Okay, is being revealed against all godlessness, wickedness of people who suppress truth. So people who don't believe the right things, and people who are doing wrong things. Right? And people who are preventing other people from understanding the truth. God is upset with those sorts of people.
But that's implying that these people know a truth.
That's all we've got so far.
Okay.
This is what God is mad about.
Okay.
People who are acting wickedly and who are suppressing truth.
Okay.
Verse 19. Since what may be known about God is plain to them because God made it plain to them.
Okay.
For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse.
Okay.
So God's wrath is being revealed all sorts of places, and it is not limited to people who know or don't know about Jesus.
Like his punishment is being
God
revealed?
is punishing the whole world.
Like actively?
It is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness, right?
Okay.
And so people are experiencing the consequences of sin everywhere.
Right.
And you would say, but I didn't know it was sin.
Okay.
I didn't know it was sin. How can I be receiving it is unjust for me to be receiving punishment for sin when I'm not even aware of the concept of sin. I didn't even know you existed.
Right.
I didn't even know there was a God, much less that I owed God anything, much less that any of the things that I'm doing are sin, or much less that the things that I'm believing and teaching are suppressing truth. I did not know. I didn't know. And so so this is addressing someone who is being punished either in this life or the next. And it's like, I'm being punished. It does not seem fair or right that I'm being punished because I didn't know.
So quick clarification. Okay. In this exact moment, is he talking to people that he knows is in a society that's close to people who know the gospel, or is he talking to the desert island person?
Paul is talking to the Romans. The people he is talking to are Christians.
Okay.
And one of the main things that Paul is doing is he is wanting to get to Rome to preach to Romans firsthand. But now a rumor is breaking out that Paul is he's scared to come.
Okay.
And so that's why it kind of starts there's a verse in we just went past that would be before this passage we looked at. So I'm not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power of God for salvation.
Okay.
That is him defending himself. It's not just a theological statement. It's not a bold thing. He's needing to defend himself.
Right.
I'm not ashamed of the gospel. I am. And so he is not only feeling the need to defend himself, but since he can't preach to them, he's been inhibited at this point still to be able to speak to them face to face. He's going to go ahead and do it long distance. And so this is why Romans is not only him defending himself, but basically him introducing to them his theological viewpoint. Like what is the gospel to him? And it is this very, very deep thing. So he's not, in most of his letters, he's correcting things. I've been there. You've heard me. I was there with you for a few years. I've gone away. You're messing up. Now I've got to come and correct a few things. This is him starting with scratch from them. Okay. They are believers, but he's making sure, hey, I need to make sure we all understand everything.
Before he's
been
there.
He is starting with the very beginning. One of the questions you asked at the very beginning of our last episode, when you say get right with God, what do you mean? Right. If you'd ask Paul that question, he'd say, Paul, what do you mean by getting right with God? He would say, well, Abigail, let me tell you, the wrath of God is being revealed in heaven, from heaven against all godlessness and so that's what he's talking about. There is wrong. What does it mean to get right with God? What does it mean to find God? Well, let me tell you, the wrath of God is being revealed all over the world.
So he's establishing that we can all tell.
And no one, whether they know God by name or not,
they can recognize this.
No one is excuseless, because according to this, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. That he is revealed enough in his creation, namely his power and his nature, his divine nature and his eternal power have been revealed, that they've been clearly seen.
And this is his personality nature, not nature.
Right. Who God is in his essence. The essence of who God is and his power can be seen through creation, and people may have seen it and rejected it. They may have seen it and ignored it, but no one can say, I
had no idea.
Never noticed that. You're right. Mountains are really big. The world is vast. Everything is immensely complicated. There's no way this could have come out of
Right.
I mean, even the most hardcore atheists, if it turns out they're wrong, and God is like, God's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to punish you now, and they're not gonna be like, what? I never even what? I didn't even know. Bro, you knew, and you chose to reject it. So you can choose to reject it. You can choose to ignore it, but you cannot say that it was not evidently revealed to you.
Right.
So that is what Paul is saying here.
Okay.
That there is enough out there in the world where no one is without excuse. So when you talk about the guy on the desert island, what we're talking about mostly is a theoretical person who sees that, the divine nature and eternal power, sees that in creation and is curious by it. I'm not going to reject it. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to pursue it. What more can I know about this God other than what is generally revealed to me?
Right.
What does God do with that person? So I say it's mostly a hypothetical person, because really we're just creating this person in our own mind. Most people who ask this question have never met someone like that.
No.
Right? We're just imagining them. There are missionaries in history who have met people like that, people from a secluded tribe who had what appeared to be a very well-developed theistic worldview. Okay. Without any help from any outsiders. No outsider had ever visited this tribe.
Theistic is just a God.
I believe in a singular knowable God.
Okay.
Not just there is a God, but a knowable God. Okay. And so they find these tribes of people who have a very well developed understanding of who God is,
Right.
even though no one told them.
Yeah.
And so there are evidences out there in the world from missionaries and people, sociologists, of people of isolated tribes that grew out of animistic, tribalistic worldviews and really had a fairly developed theistic worldview, even though it had not been influenced by anyone else. So we
Right.
have people who are responding to this, his eternal power and his divine nature, in some way by pursuing that God, and either by their own cultural reflection and or God continuing to use other supernatural means to
Right.
reveal himself to them, to the point to where these missionaries come to tell them about Jesus. And there's an anticipation of it.
Mm-hmm.
We knew you would come. God told us you would come.
Right.
He said there would be a white man with a book and he would tell us the truth. We had heard that God had sent his son and that eventually there would be some people that would come tell us. And so there is evidence out there that at least at some point in time, God has revealed more and more of himself to people who pursue that.
Yeah.
But this passage in particular, the Romans 1 passage, is not evidence of that.
Right.
All this passage does is say the person on the desert island can't say they didn't know.
Right.
They chose to either reject, ignore, or pursue. Reject and ignore, they don't have an excuse, and so the wrath of God is being revealed. If they pursue, now we're having theoretical questions.
Right.
How much do they have to pursue? What if someone is fully, with their full whole heart, pursuing God, but they die before someone named Jesus to them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what Mark and I were saying last time. Is like, I trust in the grace and the character of God to do right by people.
Right.
But it seems, the evidence seems to suggest from what missionaries have done out in the world, that even in the absence of a missionary, God responds to people pursuing him with further revelation.
Yeah.
But it also does seem like the story does always end with God bringing a missionary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is kind of not totally on topic with the podcast, but that just is interesting, thinking about all these smaller island indigenous people that typically worldviews that include some type of religious worldview is established.
Right.
You're probably not ever going to find an indigenous tribe that believes atheism
Right.
as their first worldview.
Right.
It makes more sense that the world is more complex than that and divinely created. And it's these more progressed countries that create atheism and move away from that.
Yeah, so the way we would look at that is there is something natural in us to pursue something deeper and greater,
Right,
and
meaning.
divine, right? The skeptic would say
That's just
it is
you're not enlightened.
It is an overly simplistic.
Yeah.
It is the kind of thing that you grow out of culturally.
Right.
Obviously, I disagree. I
disagree.
disagree with that. I think we are suppressing, and again, what it's saying right here suppresses the truth.
Yeah.
I think there is a suppression of truth that happens for us to look at what we see and ignore the fingerprints of God in it.
Yeah.
I don't think it is an evolving worldview. I think it is a suppressing, prideful one.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you and Mark kind of touched on it a couple different times, and I think you even called Mark our resident missionary expert, something
for
like
sure.
that. I have a memory of reading an article titled Reality of Hell. There's these kind of depressing ways to look at it, but y'all did hit on multiple times the idea of this does highlight a need of what our response is to the reality that there are some people who have not heard. There is obviously a need for people to have a response to Jesus. I did like your breakdown of it's not our interaction with saying yes or no to Jesus that separates us from God. It's our sin, and
Right.
everybody has sin. Therefore, we all start separated, kind of.
Right.
I think that's what you would say.
Sure.
But what would you say to the person that's hearing this and maybe their reaction is like, well, now I'm just depressed? What motivation should that be giving to people of just a heart for people to want to know God?
I think it really comes down to, do you believe that in this life and the next, you are better off knowing Jesus than not knowing Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
do you believe that for yourself? That it is better. I mean, there's any number of physical things that we could say. Do you believe that access to clean water makes your life better than it would be if you didn't have access to clean water?
Yes.
Of course. And so we think it is important for governments and nonprofits and religious organizations to go around to places that don't have access to clean water and give them access to clean water.
Right.
That is a noble thing to do because we are tangibly improving lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If we can get anti-malaria medicine out there into the world, we are improving the lives of people by doing that.
Right.
And so it is a good thing to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about people who don't have access to clean water, who don't have access to anti-malaria medicine, you get sad.
Yeah.
And you think, I wish they had that. Do we put relationship with God through Jesus Christ into a similar category?
Mm-hmm.
These people's lives would be improved if they knew who Jesus was.
Yes.
Well, then in the same way we want to bring tangible physical good things to them, we also want to bring this to them. But if we believe Jesus is good for me, but whatever tribal thing you believe is probably working just fine for you, and there's really no need for me to bring it to you, then that's something different. But if I think, man, their lives, both in this life and the next, would be greatly improved with access to Jesus, I should be compelled to be involved in making sure that happens.
Right.
And when I think about the people who don't have it, who don't have Jesus, who don't have clean water, who don't have medicine, who don't have whatever, it makes me sad to think about that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can feel overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Why do something if there's still going to be all this great need? And then there's, the story of the parable of the kid and the starfish. Have you ever heard this thing?
No, that is not what I was expecting.
Kids
you to
walking
say.
down the beach, and there's just like thousands of starfish that
Uh-huh.
have been that are on the shore. That if they don't get back into the ocean, they're going to die. And this kid sees that. He's picking up starfish one at a time and throwing them back in. And this, cranky old man comes up to the kid and being like, "There's no way you're going to be able to get all those starfish back in the ocean.
Oh.
You're not really making a difference."
Uh-huh.
And the kid picks up starfish, throws it in, and says, "Made a difference for that one."
Oh, did you make that up?
No. It's not like anything. We adopted our youngest from foster care, and we called her our little starfish.
Oh.
We don't believe that in us bringing in Layla into our home and adopting her, that we have radically changed the landscape of foster care in America. But
you changed her life.
But we changed this one kid's life, right? And so I think there is a situation that some needs can seem so overwhelming that we can be paralyzed by it. But there is something I can do. I can build a relationship with my neighbor, and invite them to church with me.
Mm-hmm.
I can give $25 a month to somebody who I know is a missionary in a country on the other side of the world.
Right.
I can do something, even if I can't do everything. I can do something. I can take a step. So we can't allow the vastness of a problem from at least having us take one step forward. I think there's also some of us that are afraid that if I take one step forward, that God's going to going to recruit me to take more steps that I'm currently comfortable with.
So just don't even think about it.
Right. So don't even get involved.
Yeah, well, when I was listening to it, I was thinking there's almost two reactions that someone could have to the conversation that y'all had. That this is depressing. Why would God do that? I'm angry, whatever that category would be. Right. Or there's I'm so inspired by the tribes who have had people showed up, or the countries that have, whatever it may be. I want to be a part of making sure people around me hear.
Right.
And Mark's statement of the problem is urgent and God gave us the ability to be a part of it.
Yeah, and the angry thing, I mean, I totally understand that because I've been asked to speak at a thing here in a few weeks kind of on that topic about God sending people to hell is the phrase that people use.
Wow.
Why does
That's the name of the topic they told you?
Yeah, it's actually a thing here at the church in a couple of weeks. The summer series, right? Why would God send people to hell? And it's an interesting phrasing. As always, you can tell a lot about kind of where people's heads at by the phrasing of the question.
Right.
Is God sending people to hell, or is he allowing them to choose their own path? So if the Romans 1 passage is true, God has revealed enough about himself where I have three choices. I can reject it, ignore it, or pursue it.
Yeah.
If I choose to reject what God has shown me about himself, and God's like, okay, you're rejecting me.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it has consequences maybe they hadn't thought through, but I'm choosing to reject, and God lets you reject him. Or you choose to ignore God, and God lets you ignore him.
Mm-hmm.
Is that on God? Does that make God cruel?
Right.
That he didn't force you
to do something.
He should have forced you, or he should have warned you better.
Right.
Like at what so just even in that sort of thinking, like somebody sent me this huge long text last week, maybe talking about their reflections on hell. Somebody that's not a part of the church anymore, they moved away, but they were asking that sort of question. And I was like, do you believe that it is kind for God to make someone come to heaven when that person says, I don't want a relationship with God. I don't want to know God. I don't like God. But God's going to be like, it doesn't matter. Once you die, I'm making you come live with me anyway.
Right.
Is that what
that's
God
not
is
actually what they want?
Is that what God is supposed to do?
Right. Well, that's taking out relationship. That's just a dictator.
All right. Well, it's like I'm giving you what you asked for.
Right.
But you think, well, the consequences are too severe. So I'm not saying that I'm going to be able to answer that question in the 40 seconds that I just said right there. But right. I think it is at least a new way of framing the issue in your own brain, as opposed to God is cruelly sending innocent people to hell.
Right.
As opposed to he is allowing people to pursue a course of action without forcing them to choose something different.
Right. Yeah. And you've said before on this podcast, the nature of someone's question does reveal a lot about the way they phrase it, reveals a lot about what they're really asking. Almost.
Right. and most, a lot of deep questions that we have about God and life and can really just a simple reframing.
Right.
I don't need to give you the answer. I just want to reframe the question and let you think about it. Why does God send people to hell? Why would God make someone who doesn't want to be with him? Yeah. You answer that question, then we'll talk. Like there's another way of looking at that question. Okay, so once I think about that a little bit, now I've got a deeper understanding of the topic to really reflect on what is hell, what is the afterlife, what is God, what kind of relationship do I want with God, how strong should God be in forcing me to do things. Now I'm just thinking about it differently.
Yeah.
You may still come to the conclusion hell is an unjust, unfair punishment.
Right.
But at least let's have thought about it a little deeper before we just say that God should make everyone be in heaven with him.
Right. Yeah, it's like taking a toddler to a restaurant they don't want to go to.
Oof.
They're not going to get any happier once they're there.
I mean, that really is it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no better reward once you get there.
Yeah. I know Abigail, and she's got tons more questions. We try to keep these things to a bite size. And so come right back. Come right back next week. Catch us in our next episode. Abigail and I are going to keep this conversation going. As always, thank you so much.
See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Cultivate podcast. Our hope is that you are taking steps to go deeper in your faith, that you are asking big questions and you're looking for answers. We hope that we can be a resource for you through our podcast and any other way that we can help you. You can find all our episodes anywhere that you can find podcasts, including YouTube. And we would love for you to go there and check out and listen to any of the other episodes that you feel that it can encourage you or help you in your faith. If you are local, we would love to help you get connected at our church. You can find us at thegrovechurch.org. If you go to the Connect link, you can find all the information you need about our services in person or online. We would love to connect with you on a Sunday or online. Any way that we can help you, pray for you, please let us know. And again, thank you so much for joining us.